and I could have went on and on and on and on, but we probably would have been here for the 52nd quadrennial second, and I've gone through all the things that you have been able to accomplish at such a young age, under the age of 45, and that is very impressive. And being a black woman in this environment within itself is so impressive, and we're just so proud of you. For those of you who may not be, for those who are watching, who may not be as familiar with your body work and the things you've been able to accomplish, please put some background color on who you are and some of the things you've been able to do at such a quick time in your career.
Well, as you mentioned, been elected since 2016, so I am elected to the Florida House of Representatives. At that time, I've had the opportunity to not only serve my district, but serve many of our members within the legislature. I've served in leadership since being there as a Democratic whip, but also now as the Democratic leader pro tem. That particular position is pretty much the number 2 person, to where if our leader is unable to fulfill his duties, I then will come in to take that role.
A black woman,
a black
Amy woman,
absolutely,
under 45,
yes, indeed,
a new mother with a 9-month-old
baby, absolutely.
That's all right.
And so, my time has been focused on families, children in particular, but also healthcare. Healthcare for new moms. This year we had the opportunity to really dive in to that particular sector to make sure we are able to protect our moms and receive, have them receive the proper healthcare that they truly deserve.
Because we oftentimes hear, and I know now Vice President, but at that time Senator candidate Harris, talk about how black women are more likely to die in terms of giving birth, more so than any other group in the world. And
Absolutely.
So it does my heart glad as the youngest son of a black woman, the grandson of a sharecropping grandmother, to know that you're fighting for what I believe to be the most consequential member of the black family.
Absolutely. We are the backbone of every family. Everyone needs moms, whether it's a husband, whether it's a father, whether it's a sister, whether it's a brother, whether it's our children. Black women, especially, again, play so many key roles within their family. So it's important that, we give mamas the opportunity to actually raise their children. This year, we were able to accomplish, you mentioned certain statistics about black women, but also many of the reasons they're dying, these are preventable reasons. And just with many of those studies that have been put out there, one of the number 1 things they said that would help is giving them the basics, which is health insurance. And so this year, we've been able to, here in Florida, I champion a bill that would extend postpartum Medicaid benefits from 60 days to an actual full year. We have so many women that are on Medicaid. 60%, if you look, even not only here in Florida, but just on a national perspective, majority of these pregnancies or these deliveries are done while women are on Medicaid. And so 60 days is not enough, because most of these women are dying during the postpartum moments, which is after they deliver a child. And after, within, let's say, 6 weeks to a year of them having that child. And so that is a very significant role. We were able to secure $242 million to invest in our moms, in our black moms, to give them the health insurance. What made this year's legislative session was so unique. You mentioned I am a new mom. This is my first baby. And I've been affected by so many women, AME women that I know who are no longer here due to just postpartum complications. And so, that's one of the reasons I became passionate, but even more passionate when I ended up having my own experience. And so this year, having a baby during a pandemic, it was important to make sure, and being also one that had a pre-existing condition, it was a high risk pregnancy. It was important to make sure that healthcare did not lapse. And so just when the pandemic hit, we've talked as it relates to the improvements of healthcare and the technology surrounding healthcare, but there have not been many healthcare plans established for mothers doing telehealth. And so we were able to do that this year with creating or establishing a telehealth program for our new moms so that, they don't have to wait
Sure.
to see a doctor once they go to that hospital to deliver.
Like South Carolina, Florida has not expanded Medicaid.
Mhm.
And like South Carolina, we have not prioritized making broadband and healthcare accessible and affordable.
Mhm.
And so as we have been pushed into this new norm
Yes.
because of this pandemic, it's so important that healthcare and access to the internet, the World Wide Web, with the information highway, as Al Gore coined it,
Yes.
is so critical and important. I flirted in my introduction of you about your role as also vice chair of the Black Caucus, and you talked about some of the things that you've been able to do since serving in the legislature. I oftentimes remind people, representatives, that the closer your government is to you,
Mhm.
the more important it is for you. Can you paint the picture for us of why the down ballot races, like serving in the House, the State House, and the State
Mhm.
Senate, the mayor, sheriff, and county commissioners, why those races are just as consequential as those who are considered upstream?
Well, I'll start off by saying all politics are local.
Tip
And-
O'Neill.
Yes. And, when it comes to policies that really affect you, it's those that are local and closest to you that affect you a whole lot quicker than what will be done more so at a
If your
federal
trash is not
level.
getting picked up, you can't
Don't
call your
call
congressman.
me.
No, you can't call you.
Don't call me,
Or
you
your
gotta
city
call
council
your
person,
city
your county-
commissioner.
There you go.
Absolutely. Many of the issues with many of our local roads, potholes, in the area.
Can't call your school board member.
Can't call them. And so it's important that we educate ourselves on all aspects. I know a lot of folks, especially within, my generation, feel that, politics just doesn't affect me, but it affects everyone. And more so now than ever. You have, and that was kind of one of the reasons I ran for office, is because, most of these laws that people are continuously passing will affect me more so than a 60 or 70-year-old woman or man.
Or have more impact,
It will
perhaps
have-
the presidency or the Congress will
Absolutely,
have.
absolutely. So it's important that we all get involved in all aspects, because I will just tell you, just with most of us, and especially African Americans, most of us are Democrats. Most of us see the adverse policies that many on the other side do, and how those things push us back from progress. And so it's important, in order to combat those things, many of them are focusing, because our focus is solely on one thing, meaning our federal government. Many of them are now looking to take over in legislatures. Many of them now are looking to focus more so, while many are focused on a state race, they're focusing on how they can take over our education system or on the school board.
It's concentrated in control power.
Absolutely, and so it's important that we get involved. Each one teach one and educate yourself. Many of our legislators or those in policy need to hear from those that put them in office. And not only us waiting to hear from them, but it's important that we come to them and give them our voice versus waiting on them to come
We
to
call
us.
that accountability.
Absolutely.
Accountability. Representative, staying on the policy front, what has been some of the priorities, or what are some of the priorities in your role as vice chair of the Black Caucus? Because I think, as in Washington D.C., the Black Caucus in any state probably is the conscience of the people and of the General Assembly. So talk about the role of the Black Caucus in Florida.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, just in any case, the Black Caucus really is the conscience of any governing body. This year, we have seen, just with COVID-19 and that pandemic, sort of rip off a bandage of the problems that we have within our communities, and more so from a healthcare space. We have been affected more so by COVID-19, not only economically, health-wise, but also within, our schools and our education. When schools had to go online, many of us aren't even have the broadband capacity or bandwidth for our students to continue their education. And so it was important that, during our summer months, our off time from the legislature, we hone in to provide educational opportunities and conversations for many of our constituents, not just in Orlando, but it was a statewide effort where we had a 4-part series on COVID-19, with really kind of trying to dispel the myths, and really looking or educating surrounding the issues we as African Americans have with whether or not COVID-19 is real. When it came to a vaccine, whether or not we should be taking a vaccine. Well, what about what happened with the Tuskegee experiment or any other medical labs that were happening before us? And so it was important that we had folks to hear from doctors that looked like them, from pharmacists, from scientists that really looked like them. And by having many of these medical organizations or businesses invest in that as well. We got to hear from mental health experts.
So important.
Because
particularly
the
for
mental
our
health
community.
piece for our community was important. With just having a struggle day to day. We're already having issues, but then now you're having all this stuff keep you, in your
Confined.
own,
We're
confined and in
confined.
your solitude. So it was without being able to go anywhere to get the services you need. And so it was important for us to look at that, but also us as legislators to really meet based off of the issues and the concerns we heard from constituents. How do we go back to the legislature and put an ask as to what we're gonna need?
Being in the minority.
Being-
double minority.
Absolutely.
You're a triple minority. Black, woman, Democrat.
Absolutely.
And for the rest of you all, just being of color.
Yes.
And Democrat in a Republican dominated state.
Right. And so we were very successful with that. Myself, along with State Representative Fentress Driscoll, who has been sort of a partner, and she has actually been elected the first Black woman Democratic leader for the 2026 legislative session, with my hopes of her becoming Speaker of the House if we go to the polls and vote in record number and win back some seats. But that's another prayer for another day.
Sure. well, speaking of prayer, and since we're at the 51st quadrennial, I heard you at the press conference yesterday talk about your AME,
Yes.
let me say, security blanket that
Yes,
exists in your life.
absolutely.
Talk about your relationship with the AME Church.
Well, definitely, I am a Christian, and one that gave my life to Christ at a very young age. But it was just the importance of having that foundation, and that foundation was began within the AME Church. So born and raised in the AME Church, started at the New Bethel AME Church right here in Orlando under Reverend Daniels. We have quite a few folks from the AME Church that have actually come out of that church. When you talk about your bishop, Bishop Sam Green grew up in New Bethel AME Church. As well as the Marvin Sanders and Reverend, we call him Bino, but Reverend Ronald Slaughter, who's doing some amazing things in New Jersey. But I have been a product of the AME Church, reared as a YPDer, and so a lot of my grooming, and I will say, my grooming basically was from where I am today was because of what the AME Church offered me and how they instilled and poured into me.
How and can the AME Church play a role in helping push forward towards progress what you do now in the Florida legislature? Because there are some who think that they look at the picture one way. Okay, the church may play a role in letting you come by the Sunday before the election, let's give them a prayer, let's give them a praise and get out of there. But perhaps some have gotten lost on the fact that we've got to keep on pushing after there's an election, because that's when the real work happens.
Absolutely. It's important that, again, we stay engaged at all aspects from the beginning.
All of us, including the church.
The church.
Not the church brand, because the church
Correct.
and politics is different, but individuals.
As individuals, but also as a collective. We have here, and they participated for years, but we have AME Day at the Capitol. Those days are very important for the church to come in to provide, whether it's prayer, but also really give their platform on many of these social justice issues. The AME Church has always been, whether you want to say it or not, political. They have always played a key role in many of the governing bodies throughout our country, but even also on a federal level. And so I would say that's kind of how I got in politics, is just, through just the the connections I made through the AME Church and just the power that it has and their strength, but also their voice. And they have again been a voice within our federal halls, but also with our state and local levels. And it's important that we know that although I will say my generation tends to not go to church, or they tend to not see the benefit of being a part of a body. It's important that the AME Church and the people in it really get involved in some of the social and local issues. Because I feel, many times when we're looking at the issues on the other side, most of them play this Christian politics or being a Christian, hence why we are doing or passing this particular.
They use it as justification, particularly they deem themselves evangelicals, but that doesn't even equate to the black church experience in any way, shape, or form.
And it's important that we have that same. Yes.
We should have the same kind of.
We
mindset.
have to have that same voice, and we have to sit there and depend on our leaders to also be able to combat many of those things that we're seeing on the other side.
Let's talk about seeing the other side. 2022 in Florida will be just as consequential as 2018 was or 2010 was for the country. Forget about Democratic and Republican, but for the country, maybe even for the world. Because I think whoever wins will essentially have some control on what happens in the world. Talk about how important battleground Florida will be.
Well, Florida always is the decision state. We always are making the decision, and it depends on
midterm or presidential.
Midterm or presidential. We decide what comes to the state. What comes to the federal level, to the nation. And who will be the president? Who will sort of, lead? And it's important this year because we have a huge shift. This is a redistricting year for us. And so just being in a minority within the legislature, it gives Republicans the opportunity to draw maps. They've already set the stage for many of our courthouses, our Supreme Courts.
To put us
from
deeper,
a federal,
deeper into the minority.
as it relates even to our state Supreme Court. So it's important that we pay attention. We have a governor who is looking for re-election this year.
And potentially run for president.
Exactly, and depending on how the outcome of this particular election will determine whether or not he's on a ballot in 24 or 26 running for a higher office. We have seen the issues that he has caused here in Florida. And it would be my hope that we pay attention to those, remember those things, but also make our ways to the polls to be in a disagreement so that we don't have to continue on with this. We also have, former President Trump.
Who lives in Florida.
Who is now a Florida resident. Who is looking.
You don't represent him for the record. Let's let the people know.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I probably wouldn't be elected anymore if I had to represent him. But he's looking to figure out what he's going to do. His daughter is looking out. There have been comments as to whether or not she will be our next governor. We have one that is we have a member of my church, Congresswoman Val Demings, who is looking to.
Was with us this morning.
Oh, great. Well, she is looking to run for U.S. Senate.
She is running, as she told us this morning.
Absolutely. And so it's important that we balance, again, the House there in the Senate, not only with putting her here to help combat what we deal with from our two senators, and the lack of representation we have with our two senators, but it's also important that she works towards balancing the power there in DC. And that is going to be very, very critical this year to not only help us for our future, but also it determines whether or not we get stuff done.
For me, I put it in simple terms because I'm from South Carolina, I'm a civil fellow. It's about survival.
Absolutely.
And speaking of survival, without the black vote, issues and policies that matter to us, they become life or death.
Absolutely.
Can you, Sunday school version, because we're running short on time, frame up for us the importance of the black vote turning out in a place like Florida, and not just a presidential election, but in an off presidential election, like a midterm election, not just for the Senate, and for the House and for the governorship, but for state houses, court houses, city council, county commissioner, school board, etc.
Well, I would say we are in the fight for our lives, literally.
Say it.
We have seen where there have been continuous voter restriction and voter suppression bills that have come through our legislature
Voter suffocation.
each year. We have seen where there have been constitutional amendments placed on a ballot that says, yes, let's give everyone that right to vote. But we've seen where it has been manipulated to whether that has not happened.
Y'all even had a poll tax in Florida.
We sure did. And so people have to pay attention to what folks are really doing. It is really looking to set us back and continue to put us in bondage. Our education system, you know, there is a public education system, there is a decrease in funding each year that goes to, you know, our public schools where many of our children are. However, there is no concern as to whether or not your child is educated or not. And so it's important that, again, from all aspects, we pay attention to this, because if not, they're looking to shut schools down. And that's just how the legislature has filed bills to do. Schools will be shut down, or districts will be shut down if our children do not receive the proper education. When we're looking at our state legislatures, we can be more effective when you vote. So the things that are in your interest are not necessarily the things that are coming to pass. They won't come to pass until you participate.
That means just, look, my political father and mentor, Jim Clyburn, says it best: you cannot govern if you do not win. Losers do not legislate.
Absolutely not.
Pure and simple. And all of that is hinged upon whether people who look like us come out and vote in every single election.
In every sense. We should not allow disappointment to dictate whether or not we come back to the table.
Or not even disappointment, lies. You gotta remember what happened in 2016. It was just lies flying around everywhere.
Absolutely.
And for that was voter suppression all by itself.
It's the manipulation. It's called the politics of distraction.
Politics. It's pretty good.
And it is happening not only here in Florida, but it is happening throughout our nation.
Especially in the South. Things always are given birth in the South, and they grow themselves and spread deep and wide around the country. And there's a reason for that, because the highest concentrations of black people are in the South. Representative, before I let you go, we were joking earlier with my dear friend and brother, Senator Sharon Jones in Florida, but you're an ambitious woman.
I am.
You have been able to accomplish a lot very quickly. What's next for you? And when it's all said and done, and the ink dries on the pages of history about your career and your time in politics, what do you want the pages to read?
She did, and she cared. That's exactly what I want. I am a very passionate person, and I have just, through the grace of God, been able to lead with passion, but also have the results from the various passions I've had. I'm in this for the long haul. I've been in this process, I've been paying attention to what has gone on. I've carried an interest since I was about 10 years old. And so I want a good body of work to speak for me.
May
and
the
a
work
legacy.
You do
Absolutely.
speak for you, as the old second Sunday song used to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's what I would want. My next venture will be running for state senate here in Orange County.
Because y'all are term limited.
Yeah, so I actually still have 2 more years. So I'm in the middle of my 3rd term. We get a total of 4. And so there is still work to do, but I can be of greater significance and an asset by going into the Senate race. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Representative, I'm so thankful we had a chance to connect in a deeper,
Absolutely.
More methodical way. I'm so proud
Thank you.
to know that an AME sister in Florida is tearing up the rooms, pulling up carpet everywhere she goes.
Happy to do it.
And to all of you who've joined us, don't forget to let us know where you're at, who's your bishop, what church you're from, where you may be living, and any recommendations or any comments you may have about our ongoing Christian dialogues. We will be back with you later on for some other interesting guests. Until then, we'll see you soon.